I would immediately start with Mr. Cervone. He is an expert of what is real estate finance. He is also a firm believer in what concerns sustainability. Sustainability that can add value to any industry. Thank you very much. Stefano, the floor is yours. Thank you very much. First and foremost, I'd like to thank Andrea Pancani for his valuable invitation, Issa for welcoming me and for organizing this very interesting meeting. I'll introduce myself because in this background, I am the managing director of a real estate company which is listed on the Milan Stock Exchange. And then I clarify, this is a real estate investment trust, as this is called, and we might have a conversation on the way these proprietary structures are organized. I mean, real estate structures are organized in Italy, but there are similarities also in the rest of the world. The topic I was assigned is very challenging, the integrated management of services in the new normal, and it is convenient to me if I think of a period when we can no longer speak about real estate without thinking that the use of space has become a service. It is no longer an asset or goods that you can get a return from. This trend has been accelerated over the past few years or decades, 10 years. And this trend was even more accentuated, emphasized by the last 2 or 3 years events. The pandemic drove a whole set of occurrences, very powerful ones. Some underlying information. The real estate industry is surrounding us everywhere. We all live and work in a built environment. So we can look at this infrastructure from different perspectives. Mention was made of the new normal. We are witnessing important, significant historical changes. And when we wake up in the morning, we see that very many things are no longer the way they were just a few years ago. At the end of this year, the world population will reach 8 billion people. So with respect to some decades ago, the figure has considerably changed, increased, and also the ratio between people living in the countryside and people living in the cities has been exceeded. Urban dwellers account for 55% of the global world population. This means that we are witnessing to radical change in our lives, in the organization of life. Key things changed because at the end of last century, sorry to use this expression, I feel very old when I say this, there were researchers who dealt with these problems. I remember Manuel Castor's publication on the networked society and the impact that IT or shared database had on our lives. the impact of globalization, and also Saskia Saxon and Richard Floridian started studying the urbanization process and saying that talents, creatives tended to agglomerate, to concentrate in cities. These global hubs, Saskia listed some of the most important cities in the world, and they coincided with the Floridian's conclusions and Manuel Castell's conclusions. So the presence of airports, advanced service industries, cultural centers, research laboratories in specific conglomerates triggered the formation of a network connection to be established amongst all these cities, where the so-called creatives, people working their brain, their mind to work, would have gone there to live and work, so as to express their potential. What is the impact of all this on the use of space? Space as a service. You provide services to spaces. We try and understand what is the best use of spaces and what are the services being used by this space. And we should take stock of all these exchanges and interactions. What happened is that we witnessed to a reduction in the use of space in larger cities. When I started my professional career at the end of the 80s, beginning of the 90s, we went and visited the top managers, and you entered the huge halls which were the office of the top managers. These were maybe 50 or 60 square meters. Today we are going to visit top managers in a cubicle. Oftentimes there is no cubicle, they're just working remotely. And these cubicles are 4 or 6 square meters. So the average dimension of a workstation 30 years ago was around 18 up to 20 square meters. Nowadays, such a size considerably reduced because the objective, the target is 4, maximum 6 square meters per workstation. And this changes our lifestyle. But what I can say is that even worse things happened. Technology. This is a further aspect that compressed the use of spaces. When I began my career 30 years ago, we used mainframe computers. We used devices which were very cumbersome. Telecommunications, advanced technologies, research laboratories, they all needed huge spaces to host these mainframe computers, these equipment. Nowadays, what filled one room as large as this one can be found in this pen space. So the processing power, the memory, the storage of data has been limited in the absorption of space, but also
poi ai tempi più recenti.
Labor organization has changed, because not everybody went to work to the office. Even before the pandemic, a trend had started whereby there was a rotation of people going to the office. So the desk were not in a way occupied by individuals on a regular basis, but there were desks which were being rotated. General managers could easily work from their home, from a hotel room, or from their office. After the pandemic, everything changed. There has been a trend developing to keep people working from home, whether it was administration personnel. Still, a distinction should be made, because if you are a person working in the administration department, then you can work from home. Instead, if you're providing services to people, then you have to visit these people. There is also a social problem, because home working, remote work concerns a certain number of people, not all working people. Anyway, it concerns a larger size of the working population, because services account for most of the jobs that we can have in Western Europe, mainly in the Western world. The pandemic contributed a lot to this home working. Mainly young people want to stay at home to work, because today there are controversies amongst the top managers that want people to go back to the office, and employees are saying we are more productive if we work at home. So there is again a debate, a discussion going on about this topic. This is something to be explored. No conclusion can be drawn yet. It is premature. We should also be considering the emotional aspects, psychological aspects. Truly enough, if we go to the office, we pollute the environment, but going to the office grants a certain discipline, because I must wake up, get dressed, and take a car or public transit means and go to work. So this is a disciplined way of life, living. The risk we run is that people stay at home and don't even want to get out of their bed. But what is happening, and this is being covered by certain literature, is that plenty of administration jobs are no longer useful, because what top managers realized is that very many people who stayed at home to work weren't that useful. Today, if you have a QR code, that entry is recorded in data warehouse or the ledger, etc. While in the past, the treatment of this data or the processing of this information required the presence of many workers, And the same goes back to agriculture. When tractors were introduced, farmers were redundant, laborers were redundant. This we aren't experiencing very much in the Mediterranean basin, but this is a reasoning, an aspect that in other economic contexts where innovation, advanced service industry, the fact that the economy is based on this financial, insurance and real estate is moving very fast. In Italy, we are still living with the illusion that we can decide when to work from home. I'd rather stay at home, go to the gym, and look after my children. The situation in Italy is still hybrid. We do not know where we end up. Speaking about suffering, I thought of the use of small cities and towns. One of the considerations that are being made is that work from home, that will concern a large part of the population, could take place from anywhere. One person could work from the same city, the same region, the same country, but also from different countries, and this will entail the fact that people will go and work from cities that are not necessarily large metropolises or large cities. They might as well be small towns. So it might be that this prophecy of urbanization failed, is not true. Because if people are equally stimulated by small cities, this is a further opportunity they have to live elsewhere and not only in large cities. How can we, owing an Italian real estate whose constraints are very many. In Italy, we have 3,000 years of history. There are some inner cities, city centers, which cannot be touched. I mean, they cannot be restored. They cannot be equipped with photovoltaic panels, etc. They cannot be modified or renovated because these are historical listed buildings. Again, oftentimes in Italy, very many buildings are listed, and the historical and arts superintendents are very careful. They just wanted to safeguard the artistic wealth we have, but sometimes they are too strict. I spent some time in the United States, and when I realized how easy it is there to integrate what is new with what is old, is much easier. Of course, they tell me, well, the United States just have a history that dates back 3 centuries ago, but they use the value of memory, the wealth of memory, to make them more modern. We shouldn't just be reminding our young people when Julius Caesar lived. They often do not know this, but we should be conveying a message on the future, and this is very important. And Italy has some constraints from this perspective. At the city center of Rome, the area I know better, has very few buildings made of concrete. There are walls that are 3 meters thick, and these are bearing walls, and you cannot change anything. Or there are buildings that are old convent with very small cells, but you cannot in a way turn them into comfortable rooms. So this is a very delicate, sensitive issue.
The pandemic taught us something more than ever. If the figure of rentier went into a crisis, now the owners need to know what happens inside real estate, economic-wise, integration. So we have to be concerned about the space as a service, and so give anybody that may want to use the space, be it for cultural reasons, scientific reasons, medical reasons, accommodation, and whatever you want. So we should provide an integrated package, and we should understand the needs together with the tenant, and there's some sort of dry powder. It's a technical expression. There's a monetary mass that is directed toward private initiatives, not connected to the stock exchange. And such SIIQs are looking for returns. And do you know what they do by integrating functions? You have hotel managers, service managers, and real estate owners that become the same entity. So the same subject horizontally is engaged to have a better control of the service, to create value through space, and such functions are integrated, and real estate owners have become venture capitalists. It's no longer the real investment, the old investment trust, and why? Because there's a new normal, ladies and gentlemen. The world is changing. The world has changed. And yes, in Italy we are making efforts, but we also have big opportunities. We're not the only country in the world having a history, architecture that can be hardly made flexible. In other contexts, the fact that they have constraints, it is considered to be an opportunity. And real estate side, they're trying to do it. Sorry, the mic is off.
Io ho concluso.
No, grazie.
My speech is over.
No, perché poi quando ci sono, no, come ieri, come stamattina.
Because just like yesterday and just like today, when you have the sense of what is happening, it's so negative to interrupt a speaker. You've given us a wonderful framework. When you were speaking at the beginning, managers' offices, some years ago, we considered the importance of a manager in terms of the square meters owned in an office. And you made me think about it.